The wind came down from the high plains like it meant to scour the world clean. It howled across the hard pan and rattled the frozen wire fence until it sang a thin metal song. Caleb Rourke pulled his coat tighter and tipped his hat low as he rode the fence line. Christmas Eve, bleeding into night, stars sharp as broken glass. He had done this ride 100 times before, checking posts, checking wire, making sure nothing was down that could let the cattle drift. He did not expect to see a shape slumped against the far fence post, dark against the snow, so still it looked like another shadow, until his horse snorted and sidestepped, ears laid back, and Caleb felt that old warning prickle crawl up his spine. He reined in slow, breath puffing white, hand resting near his rifle, though he did not know why. Then he saw her hair, pale as winter grass, tangled and crusted with ice, her coat too thin for weather like this, her boots half buried in drifted snow, and when he swung down from the saddle, the cold bit through his gloves like teeth. He knelt, careful, and said the first thing that came to mind, the thing that would later echo in his memory like a bell. "You look cold, ma'am." His voice sounded rough in the open night. Unused to talking much beyond cattle and horses, she did not answer, only stirred, a faint sound leaving her lips, and he saw then she was alive. Barely Caleb shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, feeling how light she was, how she shook like a leaf caught in a hard wind. Her skin burned cold through the cloth, and fear took hold, the quiet kind that settles deep. He lifted her carefully, grunting with effort, and set her across the saddle horn, mounting up behind her. He turned his horse toward the lights of his ranch house, a mile away but feeling like 10 in that weather. The fence post creaked behind them, wire singing again, as if marking the moment, as if the land itself had noticed the ride back was a blur of snow and wind and memories Caleb tried not to touch. His wife, Anna's laugh, gone these 3 winters now. The way she used to stand at that same fence and wave him in for supper. The emptiness of the house waiting ahead. He leaned forward, shielding the woman with his body as best he could, murmuring nonsense words, encouragements he was not sure she could hear. And when at last the house rose up out of the dark, lamplight glowing warm through frost-rimmed windows, relief hit him so hard his knees nearly gave out inside. The house smelled of wood smoke and coffee grounds and loneliness. Caleb laid her on the narrow couch by the fire, stoked the flames until they roared, and fetched blankets, piling them high. He knelt again and rubbed her hands, stiff and red. Her face was pale but young, maybe late 20s, a bruise darkened one cheek, and there were marks on her wrists, old rope burns healed over, but still angry-looking. His jaw tightened. He had seen enough of men to know what that meant. When she finally opened her eyes, they were grey and unfocused. She tried to speak, failed, then whispered a single word, "Please." It landed in his chest, heavier than any accusation. He brought her broth, spooned it slowly between her lips, and after a while color returned to her face. She slept then, deep and hard, and Caleb sat in the chair across from her until dawn threatened the horizon. Questions gnawed at him. Where had she come from? Who had left her out there to freeze? Why his fence? Why tonight? He was a man who believed the land answered you eventually, but it asked its own price. And he had a feeling this answer would not come cheap. By morning the storm eased, leaving the world wrapped in white and silence. She woke with a start, eyes wild, then calmed when she saw him. She tried to sit up, winced, and he gently pressed her back. "Easy now, you're safe." The words tasted strange, like a promise he was not sure he could keep. She told him her name was Eliza. "No last name, not yet," she said. Her voice carried a tremor that had nothing to do with cold. She thanked him over and over until he told her she owed him nothing, though even as he said it he knew that was not how the world worked outside. The fence stood silent, snow piled against its base, but Caleb could not shake the feeling it was watching, waiting. Whatever had driven Eliza to that frozen wire was not finished with her, and by finding her, by saying those simple words, "You look cold, ma'am," he had stepped into a story the plains had been holding its breath to tell. Christmas morning dawned pale and hard, and in the quiet of his ranch house, with a stranger sleeping by his fire, Caleb Rourke felt the old stillness of his life begin, at last, to crack. The days after Christmas came quiet but uneasy, the kind of quiet that pressed on the ears. Eliza stayed close to the fire, wrapped in blankets, color slowly returning to her cheeks, yet her eyes followed every sound outside, every creak of the house. Caleb noticed how she flinched when the wind rattled the windows, How she went still when hoofs passed on the distant road. She helped where she could, washing dishes, mending a torn sleeve, but there was a guarded way about her, like a horse that had known a hard hand, and Caleb did not press her. The plains taught patience better than any preacher on the third morning. Caleb rode out to check the north pasture. The storm had wiped most signs clean, but not all. Near the fence where he had found her, tracks emerged from the snow like ghosts. Bootprints, uneven, one foot dragging slightly, and beside them others, heavier, deeper, men who did not care if they were followed. His jaw set as he studied them. They led toward the old stage road, long abandoned but still used by those who did not want to be seen. Caleb straightened, feeling the weight of choice settle on his shoulders. Ride to town and fetch the sheriff, or trust his own sense of right and wrong. The land did not answer. It only watched back at the house. Eliza stiffened when she saw his face. "You found something," she said softly. Not a question. He nodded, told her about the tracks. She closed her eyes, breath catching, and when she spoke again her voice carried the sound of old fear. "They are looking for me," she said, then told him pieces of the truth. How she had come west answering a promise of work and safety. How the man who met her had taken her papers, her money, her name. How she had run when she could, barefoot in the snow for a mile before she stole the boots from a line shack. How she did not know if anyone else had escaped. Caleb listened, hands clenched, anger burning slow and steady. The worst kind, he told her she could stay as long as she needed. But even as he spoke, a knock came at the door. 3 sharp raps that cut the air clean. Caleb moved without thinking, rifle in hand, opening the door just enough to see 2 men on horseback, coats fine, smiles thin, asking polite questions about a missing woman. Their eyes slid past him into the house. Measuring, weighing, Caleb lied easy and smooth, said no one had come through, said the storm must have taken her. The men thanked him, tipped their hats, rode off, but the way they looked back told him this was not over that night. Caleb sat at the table, oil lamp flickering, cleaning his rifle with care. Eliza watched him, then said she would leave. She would not bring danger to his door. He looked up, surprised at the ache that thought brought, said no, said running had cost her enough. The land here was his, and he would not be driven from it, nor would he let her be. The words felt heavier than the first promise he had made, but he did not take them back. Outside, coyotes called, their voices rising and falling like laughter the next day. He rode to town despite his misgivings. The sheriff listened, face grave, but cautious. There were rumors, yes, men moving women west, but no proof. And without proof hands were tied. Caleb left with a hollow feeling. The law often arrived after the damage was done. If it arrived at all, he bought supplies, extra ammunition, a better lock for the door, and when he returned, he found Eliza in the barn, brushing his old mare, talking softly to her. Something warm loosened in his chest. The ranch had been quiet too long. Trouble came at dusk. A single rider this time, sitting his horse like he owned the world. He called out, friendly as a snake, asking for water. Caleb stepped onto the porch, blocking the door, said there was a creek a mile east. The man smiled, eyes cold, said he knew who was inside, said deals could be made. Caleb raised his rifle, voice steady, said the only deal was leave now or be carried. The man studied him a long moment, then tipped his hat and rode off, but his words lingered like smoke. That night, as snow began to fall again, Caleb and Eliza sat by the fire, silence between them, not empty now but full. She asked why he helped her, truly helped her, and after a while he said the truth, because once someone had not helped when it mattered, and he would not live that way again. Outside, the fence stood buried to its wire, a line drawn in ice, and beyond it, men who would not stop. Caleb knew the coming days would demand more than shelter and kindness. They would demand a stand, and the plains, vast and unforgiving, waited to see which way he would fall. The storm came in low and fast, a grey wall rolling over the plains like a judgment, snow thick enough to blind a man at 10 paces. Caleb woke before dawn, senses sharp, the way they had been in his younger days. He checked the windows, the doors, the barn, every fence post he could reach. The ranch felt like the center of the world and the edge of it at the same time. Eliza stood behind him, coat on, hair braided tight, fear in her eyes, but also something else. Resolve, she said quietly, they will come today. And he believed her. They came at noon, 3 riders pushing through the white, shapes breaking loose from the storm. The same men as before, and one new, broader, harder, harder, carrying himself like he had never been told no. They reined up just beyond the fence, voices carrying through the wind, calling Eliza by a name she flinched at. Caleb stepped out, rifle across his arm, the fence between them like a last courtesy. The broad man smiled and said, "This did not have to be ugly." Caleb answered that it already was. The smile vanished, and the storm seemed to hold its breath. The first shot cracked, sharp, and final. Caleb fired low, shattering the lead rider's arm, horse screaming as it reared. Chaos followed, gunfire tearing holes in the white. Caleb moved on instinct, years of ranch work and old memories guiding him. He ducked behind the fence, used posts for cover. Eliza ran for the house, dragging the rifle he had shown her how to use, fear lending her speed. One man fell, another fled, but the broad man kept coming, boots crunching over snow, eyes fixed, hate plain and burning. They met at the fence line, close enough to see each other's breath. The broad man lunged, knife flashing, and Caleb felt the old scar on his ribs tear open, pain bright and hot. They struggled, wire biting into both of them. The fence that had found Eliza now holding them fast. Eliza's shout cut through the storm. A rifle shot followed. The broad man stiffened, surprise blooming on his face before he fell back into the snow. Still at last, the storm rushed in again, covering blood and tracks alike. Silence settled, heavy and real, broken only by wind and Eliza's sobs as she reached Caleb. He sank to his knees, the world tilting, but he was alive. She pressed her hands to his wound, steady despite shaking fingers. They bound it as best they could, and when at last the sheriff arrived hours later, drawn by smoke and shots and rumor, there was nothing left but truth, bodies and a fence bent but unbroken. This time the law stayed. This time it listened. Spring came slow but sure, snow melting into mud, grass pushing green through brown. Eliza stayed, helping with calves, learning the rhythms of the land. Laughter returned to the ranch in small, careful pieces. Caleb healed the scar, a reminder he did not mind carrying. The past did not vanish, but it loosened its grip. One evening they walked the fence together, wire repaired, posts straight. Eliza touched the place where he had found her, and said quietly, "This is where I was reborn." The ranch became a refuge, not just for cattle but for people passing through who needed a night, a meal, a chance to breathe. Word spread the way it always does, soft and true, that the Rourke place was safe. Caleb found purpose in that, in standing watch, not just over land but over lives. Eliza found her name again, claimed it fully, papers replaced, future unfolding. The plains watched, and this time seemed satisfied. One winter evening, a year to the day after the storm, Caleb and Eliza stood by the fence as snow began to fall. "Gentle now, kind." He said the words again, half smiling. "You look cold, ma'am." She laughed, warm and real, and leaned into him. The fence sang softly in the wind, not a warning now but a memory, holding the story of a frozen night, a simple kindness, and the moment two lives crossed and changed the shape of the wide open West forever.